This episode of Brains on Games will talk about a recent expansion to a roll and write game set in the world of Valeria. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode we are going to talk about a roll and write game that a recent expansion just came out for, and it was sent to me a little while ago by the folks over at Daily Magic Games. Now, Daily Magic, these are the guys that create those Valeria games. We've talked about Thrones of Valeria, which is my favorite trick-taking game of all time. We talked not too long ago about Card Kingdoms of Valeria. Today, we're going to talk about the winter expansion and the base game for Dice Kingdoms of Valeria. Now, Dice Kingdoms is a game for between 1 and 4 players. The box says aged 14 and up, but I think even younger kids, 8-year-olds, could play this game. And games play in only about 30 to 45 minutes. Let's take a deeper look at Dice Kingdoms of Valeria. Dice Kingdoms is a light roll and write game where what you're trying to do is be the player with the most victory points at the end of the game. The game is going to end when one player has filled in 3 of these spaces, 3 of these areas of their castle, these guild areas. And once 3 of those are filled in, you make sure that all the players have had the same number of turns, and then you're going to start counting up victory points. You earn those victory points by attacking monster lairs and slaying monsters, by building roads and circling domains on your map, by getting these statues that are going to allow you to earn some extra victory points at the end of the game, and by filling in stars. There are several places you might be able to see on the board. These stars will give you an extra victory point at the end of the game. Now, this is a roll and write game. So what are you doing in this game? You're rolling some dice and you're writing something on these pads. So they're not wipe-off boards. Some of the other roll and write games I've talked about use dry erase markers and wipe-off boards. This game came with thick pads, and there's 2 separate ones, one for your castle and one for the wilderness where you're going to be building roads in your duchy. The active player in this game, the first thing that you're going to do once you've named your duchy over here, you have a space on your pad to name your duchy, but the active player is going to roll these 6 dice. Now, just like in Card Kingdoms, every player is going to use the black dice, and they cleverly, I think, differentiated between them. You've got black dice that have digits printed on them, and all the other dice have pips. But once those 6 dice are rolled, every player is going to get to use the black ones. That's the harvest phase. Just like in Card Kingdoms, there's a harvest phase. So you can use the individual die faces and their total. So if I had pips filled in here on these yellow flags for number 3, number 4, and or number 7, I'm going to be able to fill in some pips down here in the guild area, and that might allow me to earn some bonus. Right over here, these little squares with the green outline mean that you get to fill in a road. There are spots where you get to fill in an extra citizen, or these little knight symbols allow you to fill in a space on the wall. Sometimes when you're filling in the wall, there's these little shields with the red outline, and that means you get to fill in a monster space. So you're slaying a monster in a monster lair, but the monster lair spaces have bonuses too. So you'll find yourself again and again in this game creating these combos where you're filling in this space and that space and another space over here and earning a whole bunch of rewards as you do it. Now, everybody is simultaneously going to be filling in the rewards that they get for these harvest dice, and then the active player only gets to use the other dice that they roll that have the dots on them instead. Now, what do these dice mean? Well, if you choose, you only get to pick one of these 3 colored dice. If you choose the yellow one, that means with this number 6, I will get to fill in a pip underneath my citizen number 6. So next time a 6 is rolled, I'm going to get to fill in 2 spaces on this little soldier area down here. If I choose the green die, I'm going to get to build roads or fill in pips on this wilderness section, and that's going to start to allow me to circle these domains. Then those domains are going to give me bonus points or victory points, at the end of the game. Finally, the red die allows you to enter those monster lairs and slay a monster. Now, you can also fill in pips in the monster lairs if you get this slay reward. But if instead you choose to use the number on your die, you also earn a gold, and the gold gets filled in over here on the left-hand side. And some of the rewards for filling in these gold pips are going to be these statues and these. So there's a little picture of a plinth that you put a statue on, and the statues are going to give you lots of bonuses. You might get an instant bonus. In this case, you get to fill in 3 citizen pips on those yellow flags, or you might get an extra victory point for each domain that you have at the end of the game. So a lot of these are about earning victory points at the end. So you've got those 3 dice that give you a choice of 3 different actions, but the blue die is an added bonus die. So I can choose to add, if I decide that I want to fill in the citizen pip, I could fill in the number 6, or I could instead choose to add these together and do the number 8. Similarly, with the green die, if I want to build a road, I can add 2 extra pips that I'm going to fill in here by using that blue die that I rolled. And same thing with the monster slaying. I can get to fill in a higher number here if it is a total that adds up to these higher numbers. You see, 1 to 6, I can only fill in these 3. But if I manage to get it to add up to 8, then I would be able to fill in this one on the other side. Once the active player has colored in all of those pips and taken all of the rewards, you're going to be filling in stuff all over the place as you get later on in the game. Then the next player becomes the active player, and they roll all 6 dice, and you start that harvest phase all over again. So everyone is doing one thing on each player's turn, and then the active player gets to do one extra thing that could lead to kind of a domino effect of a whole bunch of other bonuses as they fill in spaces on their little map. One of the things I think that is great about Dice Kingdoms is that as you fill in the domains here, they're going to potentially give you some power to manipulate the numbers on the dice. If I circle this one, it has a picture of a red die. It says plus or minus 1. That means I can add or subtract 1 from the number on this die. If I get all the way down here, there's a red die that has an arrow on it, and that means I can use the face on the opposite side. So, for example, I could change a 2 to a 5, and then if I've circled both of those, I could add plus or minus 1 to it. So there's a little bit of dice manipulation and a little bit of mitigation of the randomness of those die rolls. And like I said, you also get to choose if you want to add the blue die or not. So each of these paths have a different colored die that you might be able to develop some power over. You don't have to finish an entire road on here. You do have to use whatever number you rolled. So here, if I decide I want to fill in 9 spaces, I can't fill them in all over the place. I have to follow one path, but I don't have to get all the way to the end of a path before I can start a new one. So on one turn, I could fill in my 9 here, and if I roll another and I choose to use the build action again, I can go over to the other side and start filling in the other side. So you're not limited, except that you have to use your entire number on one pathway on your turn. The winter expansion doesn't change this formula up too much. Now, what comes in the package are 2 new paths with these 2 winter themed. You can see that there's snow on the ground on both sides. There's 2 winter themed maps here that you're going to be using. This side is pretty similar. There's not very much that's changing on the castle side of the board, but the map, the wilderness, the domains are very different. The pathways change up the dice. So if I'm following, there's 2 paths at the bottom and 2 at the top. And if I'm following one path, I'm not going to get the same colored dice bonuses. I might get to plus or minus 1 to a green. And then if I continue on that path, I can flip a red die over. So you're not getting super powerful with one single colored die. The other thing that's different, and this is a big change, and this really did change up the strategies quite a bit, I would say, is that the monster lairs are spread out and they have pathways leading into them. So the way that this works now is that at the beginning, you've got control. At the beginning of the game, before you fill in anything else, you've got control over one trail into one monster lair. Once this is filled up, I can't use a red die anymore. If I get one of these bonuses, they're wasted until I take control of a domain with a trail that leads into that forest. So the one here in the middle has two pathways going into it, and you've got a path here at the top and a path down here at the bottom for those other ones. So in order to start filling in pips in a monster lair, I have to control the domain that leads into it. So it really changes things up. I can't just choose any monster lair at the beginning of the game. What skills are you working on when you play a game like a roll and write game here, like Dice Kingdoms of Valeria? Well, it is a visual spatial problem solving game. You are trying to puzzle out how can you reach the domains that you want, which pathways do you need to fill in. If you want a particular reward, which dice are you going to choose in order to fill in the pathway to get to that reward. You're also thinking about probability and puzzling out which pathways or which spaces that you fill in here are going to give you the rewards that you want. Maybe you want to, and certainly I started the first few games that I played by really emphasizing those citizens so that I would get some sort of a bonus each time somebody rolled these dice. I wanted to have these lower numbers especially filled in over here so that I could, something was happening for me every single turn. So you've got some spatial problem solving, some probability. The other thing I would say that really gets exercised when you're playing this game, especially on the later turns, is there's some working memory exercise here. Working memory is like the whiteboard in your mind where you keep information so that you can juggle it somehow. And as we got later on in the game and we were experiencing that domino effect, which was super fun, the multi spaces that we could fill in, the combos that we were creating, we needed to find a way to keep track of those things. So for example, you might roll a 10 on your road building, and all of a sudden there's 3 different bonuses that you have to fill in, and you have to keep track of where you were as you were filling in these roads. So you might start you might start out in an area that's going to give you a domain. That domain's potentially going to give you a bonus. Oh, now I have to fill in a citizen pit, but if I continue down this pathway, oh, I also get a gold. Oh, and if I fill in that gold, I have to fill in something on the wall. Oh, and now I've gotten a little bit further. So it's one where what we found ourselves doing was putting a little arrow beside all of the bonuses on the road so that we could do each step one step at a time, reducing the demand on working memory. But that's what working memory is all about. You need to keep track of those numbers and then all of the bonuses that are associated with them. So we did find it helpful to kind of put a little star or an arrow beside the things that we needed to do next so that we wouldn't lose track of things. Final thoughts about Dice Kingdoms of Valeria. Well, this is a straightforward game, a simple roll and write. It's not too complicated to figure out, but you've got those strategic options. I like that you have to choose a single die to use, and then you get to decide whether you want to add the blue die to it. I like that on every single turn, people get to do something. You're doing it all simultaneously, and that speeds things up. So those black dice, I think, were a really great addition. And the die manipulation as you went forward was fun too. And of course, my goodness, we would laugh. And it was so much fun when we got a big combo and we were filling in a whole bunch of spaces just based on one die roll. This is a fun roll and write game. Now, are there downsides? Well, one is that, and maybe it's not really a downside, honestly. The other roll and write games that I've played have used wipe-off boards, and I like that. They're reusable. That's good. These ones have these pads. You can purchase refills if you run out, but there's a lot of pads on here. You're going to have to go through a lot of games before you run out of these things. But because it's paper, and we do play on a surface that's we have a game pad on top of our table so that it makes it easier to pick up the cards and grab the cards. But we needed to put a hard surface underneath so that we could fill in those pips because the gamepad wasn't going to work for that. Now we had some solid placemats is what we used for that so that we could keep these guys in the middle of the table and it was still easy to grab them. I didn't put away my gamepad when we played this game. That's not really, do you prefer a pad over a wipe-off board? I like the pads because they're clean. The wipe off boards, you wipe them off, but they're never entirely clean again once you've used them a few times. So I do think the pads are maybe slightly preferable for me, at least. The other thing I would say is that it's not a game where you can mess with the other players. So for some people, you're building your own map and filling in your own domain. And for some people, the inability to interfere or affect what the other players are doing might be a drawback or a downside. The only real thing that you can do to impact the other player is to take the statue that they wanted. If you see that they're working towards something, they're going to get all the domains. Well, if I take the statue that gives me the domain bonus, then they can't get it until it comes up again in the deck because there's more than one copy of each one. So it is hard, I think, to mess with the other players in this game. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing, but we had a lot of fun playing Dice Kingdoms, and the addition of messing up the order of the domains on the new map and creating some choices when it comes to the monster lairs. I think that's a great addition that doesn't really mess with anything that makes the original game good. It adds a little bit, and now you have some choices over which map you want to play, and they're very easy to distinguish from one from the other. So what a great little game. Thanks so much to Daily Magic for sending this game my way. If you have any questions about Dice Kingdoms or anything else about Brains on Games, you can leave them in the comments section below the video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go. The previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.